Welcome to Beyond the Broadcast, where we bring you a behind-the-scenes look at some of our top stories our Fox 12 News team is working on. I'm Adrian Thomas, investigative reporter, and joining me now is Ward Jolles, a terrific anchor and reporter on our team. And today we are talking about the TSA, the Transportation Security Administration, and specifically stemming from one incident that happened that happened at PDX Airport. And it kind of was a highlight, I guess, of a larger issue within the
Yeah,
TSA.
you could say that.
Yeah.
Anytime we're talking about somebody bringing a meat cleaver
Okay, so we have
through
props.
TSA, there is going to be some concerns. Obviously, I know they got us this prop, this meat cleaver. Full disclosure, this is not the actual meat cleaver that was taken onto the plane.
I think it's good that we have this here right now to show our viewers, and for those listening, a meat cleaver, it can fill up your two hands. It's heavy.
It's
heavy. I'm holding it in both of my hands right now. It's a heavy object. It obviously, would appear on an X-ray going through security at an airport. So hard to believe that this would be missed.
Yeah.
Well, why don't we take a look at this story and then we'll debrief after.
All right.
It was supposed to be a routine flight from Portland to Salt Lake City. But on the night of November 13th, Delta Flight 3233 didn't take off as planned.
I was just flying home, was on a business trip to Portland.
That's Jacob Hafen with the black backpack boarding the plane that night. And just minutes later, another man walks onto the plane with what appears to be shopping bags in hand. You'll want to remember that later.
We sat on the plane for a long amount of time. And finally the captain came on and just said, "Hey, we have a security issue we need to clear before we can take off."
Surveillance video shows the pilot coming off the plane, talking on the phone, and to other airport employees. Then just a few minutes later, that man with the shopping bags comes off the plane too, this time holding something in hand.
And there was a guy that travels a lot, and he said he had heard from a flight attendant that there was a meat cleaver on board.
That's right. According to a Port of Portland report obtained by Fox 12, a flight attendant on the plane saw passenger Rami Gadalmula with a meat cleaver in one of those shopping bags. It was missed by TSA during screening, despite being clearly labeled. All passengers then had to get off of the plane and get re-screened, something that led to a nearly 3-hour delay.
It was pretty insane to think that something like that can get on an airplane.
But just how insane is it? We'd like to think that the Transportation Security Administration, established after 9/11 to enhance airport security, catches everything. The truth is, that's not always the case. It's worth noting that the Department of Homeland Security, which oversees TSA, doesn't release this data very often. In fact, the last time we got an idea of how often TSA misses prohibited items at checkpoints was back in May of 2015 after an internal study by DHS's Inspector General. Undercover agents with prop weapons and explosives went through airport security, and TSA failed to detect those items about 95% of the time, getting banned items through security in 67 of 70 tests conducted. We know from DHS records that these covert tests are still being done as recently as November of 2025, but the agency hasn't made any of the records public. But one TSA union leader in Oregon suggests the mistakes may come from the fact that frontline screeners are working under immense pressure.
There's just so much distraction, and we cannot have that in our line of work.
Trang Kim is the vice president of the local TSA union, AFGE Local 1127. She says staffing shortages, morale issues, and government shutdowns have been distracting for screeners lately. The meat cleaver incident happened just a day after the historic 43-day shutdown last fall, when TSA employees worked long hours with no pay.
Just because we do what we do and we do it well doesn't mean that, we don't get distracted. But, mistake happens, and I am going to blame the mistake on the distractions.
And Kim says one of the biggest distractions, the current legal battle between the TSA union and the Trump administration and DHS. Twice in the past year, Secretary Kristi Noem has attempted to strike down the union's collective bargaining agreement. And twice now, judges have halted the action. The battle over worker rights coming to a head in Congress.
Why are you seeking to make their jobs harder by getting rid of collective bargaining rights, which would help them with job security, safe working conditions, and ensuring accountability in the workplace?
The existence of a collective bargaining agreement is inconsistent with the mission that TSA has to perform and the agility with which we need to run this agency.
TSA denied our request for an interview, but reiterated in a statement that their employees are highly trained and use cutting-edge technology. They would not address our questions about the collective bargaining agreement or the meat cleaver incident. Delta Flight 3233 was able to take off that night eventually, 3 hours after its scheduled departure time. The guy with the cleaver, Rami Gadalmula, seemed unaware and surprised he caused all the trouble, adding he only brought the cleaver because he got a good deal on it. He was allowed to board a plane again later that night.
If you had a message for him, what would you say?
I'm glad you got a good deal. Don't take it on a plane next time. But that's all, harmless mistake.
The man involved in the meat cleaver incident was never criminally charged, and the TSA employee that failed to identify that meat cleaver received additional training. Reporting in studio, Ward Jollis, Fox 12 Oregon.
What an interesting and bizarre story, Ward. Great reporting there. Not only did you highlight just kind of the shocking nature of this incident, but you also, I thought, did a great job of showing just kind of a broader issue within the TSA right now of them feeling like they're stretched too thin and having to track, thousands of passengers a day at a single checkpoint and facing these kinds of issues while looking out for these types of objects. So obviously this made news when it happened, but what made you want to do kind of a deeper dive into this?
Yeah, well, I think that obviously the spectacle of it all was kind of interesting to us. We were told, the way we kind of heard about this was that there was actually a passenger on the plane who had only heard, and it was this Jacob guy that you see in the interview, actually. He had heard from a passenger or whatever that someone had brought a meat cleaver into the plane but didn't know. And so then we followed up, obviously, and when we were able to confirm that, wow, somebody brought a meat cleaver onto this plane and it was undetected at TSA, there was this immediate curiosity for me with something as big as this, right? It makes you think, how often does something like this happen, right? Because it seems like it would be impossible to miss this. But if it happened, does that mean that it's happened before? And is there any record of something like this happening before? What I found when I started actually digging into the data from DHS, which oversees TSA, is that they really don't like to publish these things a whole lot. Obviously, no agency wants to admit when they're wrong unless they have to. But it was interesting. You heard the numbers there. The last time we really got an idea of how often TSA misses something was back in 2015, when the Inspector General at DHS actually did their own covert test. They essentially, sent in undercover agents with prop weapons and things through security at TSA to see if they could detect things like this. And they missed them 67 out of 70 times. So that's pretty crazy. In fact, that actually led to the removal of the administrator at TSA after that happened.
Oh,
that
wow.
that data was published back in 2015. So you can see why there might be a little bit hesitant to release any more updated data than that. But it does beg the question of especially when things like this happen, how often does this happen?
Yeah. And so just so everyone's clear, the only data that is available right now was from those covert tests in 2015.
That's true. And we have asked for updated data. We know that they are still doing these covert tests at least every once in a while because there are internal memos that we have been able to obtain from DHS that show they're still doing these tests as recently as November of this past year. So that kind of gives you an idea of, they're still trying to work some things out.
Yeah.
Obviously, if they had a perfect system that was completely foolproof, they wouldn't still be doing these kind of covert tests. But they keep happening. It's just DHS is a little bit more, I guess, reserved when it comes to releasing the data. We've asked for it. We just haven't gotten it.
Yeah. So, Ward, when we're looking at your story, big picture, there's a lot of different elements, a lot of great reporting. Is this story more about, the bizarre nature of this clearly prohibited object from being taken on the plane? Or is this part of a larger problem that you found?
Well, I think that the idea that this was a meat cleaver that made it through is obviously a little eye-popping, and that kind of is a catch your attention thing. So I do think I don't want to take away too much from the fact that, yeah, a meat cleaver made it through TSA undetected. At the root of this, that's all of it, right? But it does kind of point to these bigger issues of like, first of all, how often does this happen? Are all of these security upgrades and things that we've seen at places like PDX recently, are they working? We talk about this and not, no pun intended, but this cutting edge technology that TSA has referenced before. How effective is it? Where's the numbers? Where is the testing that's been done? They don't put that information out a whole lot.
Thankfully, in this situation, this was just a man who,
Yeah.
purchased some kitchenware, that he, said he got a good deal on, and just, thought he could take it packaged
Yeah,
onto
pretty
the
wild.
plane. But yeah, I mean, there's an unsettling element.
Yeah,
Sure.
I would say so. And especially because, again, we don't have those numbers from DHS that really show how often this kind of thing happens, even though we know that they are tracking them.
Yeah.
They just aren't giving them to us. So,
Yeah.
hey, we've submitted our request, and maybe they'll get back to us eventually about these new numbers, and that'll be a follow-up story. But yeah, it's definitely a question to ask is how well security is being managed, for
Yeah.
sure.
What were some of the biggest challenges that union rep expressed to you that the agents that she represents are going through? She talked about distractions. I mean, what were some of like the common examples that you saw?
Yeah, I mean, for example, she highlighted this culture of, almost like fear and micromanagement in some ways, people getting punished, people, being brought in and talked with about specific incidents and whatnot like that. As far as their like individual worker rights go, those have to do with things like hours worked. But here's something that a lot of people don't know is that before TSA had union rights, they had to pay for their own parking at the airport.
Wow.
They had to pay every single day $30 to park, and then they would take a shuttle to the airport just to work at TSA.
Wow.
Before the
At
union,
PDX's airport.
yes, before
Okay.
the union was able to come to a collective bargaining agreement, which
Yeah.
included free parking for employees, which seems weird. Like,
Yeah.
it's like, what? Why would you not pay for your parking? But that's just one of these things. And so this is a very important issue to them, specifically the collective bargaining agreement and what will happen if it goes away. They see it as a lot of rights that they have been entitled to for a really long time. And that's something that's incredibly stressful. Again, we mentioned the shutdown. It's extremely stressful for a lot of these workers who already don't make a ton of money to go without money for weeks at a time. And it's kind of seemed, especially over the past few years or so, that these government shutdowns are used more and more often in government, specifically as a negotiating tool. And that is causing a lot of concerns for some longtime TSA workers as well.
Was kind of your overall big takeaway after this story? Did you get any additional? Well, first, did you get any additional reaction from, the TSA agents, from PDX, maybe the union rep after the story came out? Did DHS follow up with any kind of statement with you? Yeah, kind of give us kind of like the aftermath of it.
Honestly, no, I heard very little from everyone after this was published. I did hear a little bit from the TSA reps who were thankful that I kind of gave their side of the story. And then, I spoke with, obviously, throughout the entire process, our local TSA spokespeople who were very, they were responsive, I would say, but they didn't want to give a whole lot of information about the story itself. They kind of were just kind of like, we've addressed it, we want to move on, that kind of attitude. So after that, I haven't heard from them.
Yeah.
But I will say what I did learn is that a lot of people are upset that they have had their own personal items taken at TSA, and things like this can get through undetected. A lot of people are a little upset about that.
Yeah. You know, a tube of toothpaste that's, you know, a standard size and not travel size, that gets thrown away.
So,
This can be this gets taken right on the plane, even though it shouldn't obviously.
So we're not saying TSA is not doing their jobs. We're just saying that in this one particular scenario, something got through that shouldn't have, and it kind of makes you wonder why. When I'm sure we've all been there.
Yeah,
we've had things confiscated before, so they're clearly doing something. The question is just about the accuracy.
Wrapping up here, Ward, given all that you experienced with this story, all of your reporting, gathering all these elements, seeing the data that you saw, do you feel safe flying, and should our viewers feel safe flying?
I think that's a good question. Honestly, given the sheer statistics of flying and the rarity of incidents where there's any sort of weapons that are used or brought onto planes that we have seen, at least, I feel safe. I feel pretty safe flying. I fly all the time, multiple times a year, have never had issues whatsoever with any sort of security scare. I think that the stats speak for themselves. I mean, you hear all the time that flying is the safest way to travel. Odds are you probably do, run a little bit more of a risk just by driving to the airport as you do of getting on a plane. So yes, I think that it's right to be concerned and to ask questions and to seek accountability and to try to hold the officials who run these security systems accountable. But all in all, while we may not have the fullest picture at this point about how rare these incidents are, I think I would say I would still feel safe flying.
Okay. Well, thank you for bringing this to light.
Yeah.
And just going into all the different details about this story. Hopefully you can get some of that data that you're waiting on, and that'll paint more of a clearer picture of where we're at in terms of objects getting through TSA. So, Ward Jollis, thank you very much.
Thank you.
We appreciate it. And thank you for watching or listening. This is Beyond the Broadcast, where we take an in-depth look at some of the biggest stories our terrific team of anchors and reporters are working on. We'll see you next time right here.
This has been a Fox 12 podcast. For more content like this, download the Fox 12 app on your phone or any connected device like your Roku, Amazon Fire, Apple TV, or Smart TV.